This rent notice is final. You need to vacate the property by the date stated.
You can't just throw us out. It's the middle of winter.
Suburban home. The narrator, a 24-year-old man new to the city, is standing in the narrow hallway just inside the door, clutching a rent envelope he can barely fill. He's been renting a room from her, a 40-year-old woman named Evelyn, for 6 months now. She's composed, graceful, and always seems a step ahead of her emotions, like someone who's learned to control warmth so it doesn't consume her. When he first moved in, he saw her only in passing. Tidy bun, dark hair streaked with quiet confidence, and that faint scent of jasmine that seemed to linger longer than she did. But lately, there's been a shift. She lingers in doorways when they talk. She asks how his day was and waits for an answer. Her laughter has softened. There's something new between them, unspoken but felt. Now, with the envelope in his hand, he feels the weight of everything he hasn't said. He knows he's late again. He knows how much he owes. And when she opens the door, wearing a loose white sweater that drapes over her shoulder, she doesn't look surprised to see him standing there looking nervous. She just looks thoughtful. "Don't worry about it tonight," she says quietly, after a moment that stretches too long to be casual. "You've had a rough week. We could talk about rent later." Her tone is kind, but there's a small tremor in it, the kind people get when they're saying one thing and meaning another. He nods, trying to thank her, but the words don't fit right in his mouth. She steps aside, inviting him in, and the scent of coffee and candle wax greets him like warmth itself. They sit at the small kitchen table, the one she's always kept spotless. A single candle flickers between them, its light catching in her dark eyes. She asks about his job, about his plans, but her voice is softer than usual, almost searching. When their hands brush as he reaches for his cup, neither of them pull away right away. The air shifts, fragile, electric, sincere. Inside, he's torn between gratitude and something deeper he's afraid to name. She's beautiful, yes, but it isn't just that. It's the way she looks at him like he's something gentle in a world that hasn't been kind to her. By the end of the scene, the rain outside has deepened into a steady rhythm, echoing the quiet tension inside. He sets the untouched envelope on the table. She notices but doesn't move it. Instead, she whispers, almost to herself, "Some things can wait." And though neither of them moves, it feels like a line has been crossed. Not in action, but in meaning. Something has begun. The next evening begins with the faint hum of the city outside. Car lights sliding past the curtains, the muffled patter of rain left behind from the night before. He's in his room, staring at the same rent envelope, still lying untouched on his desk. He's replaying her words in his mind. Some things can wait. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it, like she wasn't talking about rent at all. He hears soft footsteps in the hallway. Then her voice, gentle, almost hesitant. "Dinner's ready, if you haven't eaten yet." He hesitates. It's not the first time she's invited him, but something about tonight feels different. The house feels smaller, warmer, like every sound carries a little too far. He steps into the kitchen, and there she is, Evelyn, her long black hair down for once, still slightly damp from a shower. She's wearing a simple navy blouse tucked into jeans, barefoot, casual, but there's something quietly graceful about her every movement. The table is already set for two. She looks up, and their eyes meet. For a second, the air between them feels like it's holding its breath. "I made too much," she says, smiling faintly, as if she needs an excuse for this moment to exist. They sit opposite each other, the candlelight softening the space. He notices the little details, the way her fingers trace the rim of her glass when she listens, the way she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear when she's thinking. It's domestic, almost intimate, but fragile, like they both know they're crossing an invisible line, one quiet dinner at a time. As they talk, the conversation drifts. She tells him about her old job, her dreams of traveling, the house she bought when she thought life would look different by now. There's no bitterness in her voice, only a kind of wistful acceptance. He listens, drawn in by her honesty, by the way she speaks without pretending. When she laughs, really laughs, it fills the room in a way that makes him forget the rain, the rent, the world outside. He finds himself watching her too long, caught in the way her eyes light up when she's remembering something good. Then silence. Not awkward, just heavy with things unsaid. She leans her chin on her hand, studying him quietly. "You remind me of how I used to feel about the future," she says softly. He doesn't know how to answer. The way she's looking at him, calm, knowing, yet unsure. It's not just curiosity. It's connection. It's vulnerability. The clock ticks softly. The candle burns lower. And when he finally stands to leave, she doesn't move. Her voice is barely a whisper. "Stay for a bit longer," she says. It's not a command. It's an invitation. And though he doesn't say yes, he doesn't leave either. The night stretches quietly between them, filled with everything neither dares to name yet. The next morning, sunlight spills through the thin curtains, painting soft gold on the living room floor. He wakes earlier than usual, maybe because he never really fell asleep. Every sound of the house seems louder. The creak of the wooden steps, the distant hum of the kettle, the faint sound of her humming from the kitchen downstairs. He hesitates before going down. Part of him wants to pretend last night didn't happen. That dinner, those quiet looks, that lingering stillness between their words. But another part of him can't stop replaying it all, trying to understand what it meant. When he finally steps into the kitchen, she's already there. Evelyn, 40, calm and composed, dressed in a soft beige cardigan and loose hair pulled into a low ponytail. Her black hair gleams in the morning light, catching golden strands. She's pouring coffee into 2 mugs like it's the most natural thing in the world. "Morning," she says, her tone warm but cautious. He nods, taking the seat across from her. The table still holds faint traces of last night, the same candle, now melted down to its base. He wants to thank her for dinner, for being kind, for seeing something in him when he felt invisible. But the words stick in his throat. Instead, they sit in comfortable silence for a while. The sound of spoons clinking against ceramic fills the space. She seems lost in thought, staring at the garden through the window. "You know," she says finally, voice steady, "you don't have to tiptoe around me. Last night was just dinner." He nods again, but her tone doesn't match her eyes. There's a softness there, a kind of careful distance she's trying to rebuild, as if she's afraid of what might happen if she doesn't. "I know," he says quietly, but it didn't feel like just dinner. Her hand pauses mid-motion. For a moment, neither of them breathe. Then she lets out a slow sigh, not of frustration, but of someone who's been trying too hard to do the right thing for too long. "You're young," she says, with a gentle, "you should be worrying about your future, not this." But there's no dismissal in her tone, only something deeper, longing, conflict, maybe regret. He studies her, noticing the faint laugh lines by her eyes, the calm strength in her voice. "Maybe I'm just trying to figure out what feels right," he says softly. She looks away, smiling to herself. "Careful," she murmurs, half to him, half to the morning light. Saying things like that makes it hard to keep distance. The moment hovers there, fragile, real, alive. Outside, the wind shifts the curtains, brushing sunlight across their faces. For the first time, they both laugh, quietly, almost in relief. But behind that laugh, there's a truth they can't hide anymore. They're not just landlord and tenant. Something gentler, riskier, and far more human has begun to take root. By the middle of the week, their quiet understanding had become part of the rhythm of the house. They didn't need to talk about it. It lived in the way their eyes found each other in passing, in the pauses before saying goodnight, in how the silence between them no longer felt empty, just full of things unsaid. But the outside world has a way of intruding on delicate things. It began when her sister stopped by, a cheerful, talkative woman in her 40s who had never met him before. He was in the living room, fixing a shelf, when the front door opened and Evelyn's voice turned unexpectedly bright. "He's renting the upstairs room," she explained casually. But when her sister's eyes flicked between them, the subtle warmth in their tones, the easy comfort in their presence, something unsaid passed through her gaze. She smiled politely, but her curiosity lingered like perfume in the air long after she left. That evening, Evelyn seemed distant. She moved through the kitchen quietly, her steps measured, her hair tied up neatly, as though to rebuild the line she felt she'd blurred. He noticed, of course. She avoided the soft glances they'd grown used to. Even her voice, calm as ever, carried restraint. "Everything okay?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Sometimes I forget the world is smaller than it seems," she said simply. He didn't press her. Instead, he watched as she wiped the counter for the third time, her movements slower, more thoughtful than usual. The candle on the table stayed unlit that night. Later, when the rain started again, gentle, rhythmic, like before, he found her standing by the window, arms folded, eyes lost in the wet reflection of the city lights. "You know," she said softly, without looking at him, "people see what they want to see, and they talk. That's how they are." He stepped closer, careful not to invade the moment. "And what do you see?" he asked. That made her turn. Her eyes, dark and steady, met his, not with surprise, but with something more fragile. "I see someone who makes this house feel alive again," she said after a pause. "And that scares me more than what anyone might say." The honesty in her voice silenced the air around them. For a heartbeat, the space between them felt heavy with truth, raw, human, undeniable. She smiled faintly, trying to shake the moment off. "Go on. You'll be late for work tomorrow," she said, though her tone lacked its usual firmness. He nodded, but when he turned to go, she reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing his wrist. Just a touch, light as breath, but enough to stop him in place. "I didn't mean," she began, but then stopped herself. Her voice broke into a whisper. "Just good night." And that single word, spoken in the quiet glow of streetlights, filtering through rain, carried more emotion than any confession could. A few days passed before the silence between them softened again. It wasn't cold, just thoughtful. Evelyn had gone back to her routines. Early mornings, quiet chores, long moments spent reading by the window with her coffee cooling beside her. He could tell she was trying to restore balance, to make their connection look ordinary again. But ordinary wasn't what it had become. One evening, the power went out. The whole street was dark, except for the faint orange glow of candles flickering behind windows. He heard her call from downstairs. Light, but uncertain. "Do you have a flashlight?" He came down with his phone's dim light leading the way, and there she was, standing in the kitchen, barefoot, her black hair falling loose over her shoulders. The candlelight made her look softer, almost vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before. "Looks like the storm took the power again," she said, half smiling. "I forgot how quiet it gets when everything stops." They ended up sitting in the living room, the single candle between them. The storm outside was gentle now, distant thunder rumbling like a heartbeat that refused to fade. She leaned back against the couch, hugging a pillow loosely to her chest, watching the tiny flame dance. "You ever feel like life just paused?" she said after a while. "Like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what." He nodded. "Every day lately." That made her laugh quietly. "You're too young to be waiting already." He smiled. "Maybe I'm waiting for the right reason to stop." Her eyes lifted to his, soft, searching, full of the kind of emotion that doesn't need words. For a moment, the world outside the room didn't exist. It was just them, the faint hum of rain, and the small flame painting gold across her skin. Then, without warning, the wind outside blew harder, making the candle flicker out. Darkness filled the room. She gasped lightly, startled, and in that instant he reached out, not to hold, just to find her hand in the dark. Her fingers met his, hesitant at first, then still. The silence was deep, but not uncomfortable. "Just real. You always do that," she whispered. "Make things feel easy. Only when you let them," he replied softly. When the lights finally came back on, she didn't move her hand right away. Her expression had changed, the guarded calm replaced by something open, unspoken, maybe even scared of its own honesty. She took a deep breath, then looked at him, really looked. "I'm not sure where this is heading," she said quietly, "but it feels too human to stop." The words hung between them, simple and raw. She wasn't asking for promises. She wasn't offering certainty, just truth. And in that flickering return of light, As if the world had resumed turning again, he realized she wasn't just the woman who rented him a room. She was someone who had finally let the walls around her heart tremble, even if only for a moment. The days that followed carried a new kind of stillness, not empty, but charged, like the air before rain. Every morning, he'd catch glimpses of her in small moments, watering the plants in the backyard, tying her robe a little tighter against the morning chill, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear as she sipped her coffee. It all looked so ordinary, yet it felt impossible to look away. He had started helping her around the house more often, small things, fixing a leaky tap, carrying groceries, changing a light bulb she couldn't quite reach. She'd pretend it wasn't a big deal, but the faint smile that followed always gave her away. One Saturday afternoon, the air smelled of fresh rain and blooming jasmine. She was out front, tending to her garden, wearing a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up and faded blue jeans. Her long black hair was tied loosely, a few strands falling over her face. He stopped at the gate, watching her for a moment before she noticed. "Are you just going to stand there, or are you going to help?" she called, half laughing. He grinned and joined her. Together they knelt beside the flower bed, their hands brushing occasionally as they worked. Every touch sent a quiet current between them, one neither could acknowledge aloud. When they finished, they sat on the porch steps, breathing in the scent of rain-soaked earth. For a long while, neither spoke. The sun was setting, washing the sky in gold and pink. "You know," she began, her voice soft and thoughtful, "when you first moved in, I thought you were just another tenant. I didn't think we'd talk this much." He smiled, watching her expression shift, calm on the surface, but something tender flickering behind her eyes. "Do you regret that?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "No," she said after a pause. "That's the problem." A quiet laugh escaped him, part nervous, part disbelieving. "Maybe it's not a problem," he murmured. She turned her face toward him, eyes steady now, searching his expression. "It is if it starts meaning too much," she said, "and I think it already does." The words hung there, fragile, brave, trembling between confession and warning. He wanted to tell her that it wasn't wrong to care, that maybe what they'd found wasn't something to be afraid of. But before he could, she stood, brushing off her jeans, her tone turning lighter again. "Come on, I'll make us some tea." As they went inside, the silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was knowing, a silent acknowledgement that something real had been said, even if they didn't finish saying it. That evening, they sat by the window with their tea, watching the first stars appear. Their shoulders brushed now and then, neither moving away. No declarations were made. No promisi s'exchanged. But in that simple, shared quiet, they both understood, sometimes love begins not with words, but with the courage to almost say them. It was the last evening of summer, warm air drifting through the open windows, carrying the faint hum of crickets and the smell of freshly cut grass. The house felt different that night, not quieter, just at peace. He'd spent the day helping her pack a few old boxes she'd kept in the attic. Not moving boxes, just memories, photo albums, postcards, pieces of a life she'd quietly tucked away. When they finally stopped, she poured 2 glasses of wine and motioned for him to sit with her on the porch. The sky was fading from pink to deep indigo, and the porch light cast a soft glow over everything. Her face, calm yet thoughtful, the edges of her hair catching light like silk. "You ever feel like time's been running faster than you expected?" she asked. He nodded. "Every day lately. But tonight doesn't feel fast. It feels like it's waiting for something." She looked at him then, really looked, and her expression softened in that way it did when she stopped pretending she wasn't feeling anything. "You made this house feel alive again," she said quietly. "I didn't realize how much I'd stopped letting people in." He didn't answer at first. He didn't need to. Instead, he reached out, slow, careful, and let his hand rest on hers where it sat between them on the wooden railing. She didn't pull away. Her thumb brushed lightly over his knuckles, a gesture small but filled with meaning. "I was afraid," she admitted after a pause, "of what people might think, of losing control of something I couldn't name." He smiled gently. "You can't lose something that was never about control." She let out a soft laugh, part relief, part disbelief. "You sound older than you are." "Maybe," he said, "or maybe you make me want to be." For a long time, they sat without speaking, just the sound of wind moving through the trees, the steady pulse of quiet understanding between them. The warmth of her hand in his felt less like a confession and more like a promise. Unspoken, natural, inevitable. After a while, she stood and said softly, "Come inside. It's getting late." But inside, she didn't turn on the lights. The room glowed only from the street lamp outside, pale and gentle. She moved slowly, turning toward him, and for the first time, there was no guardedness in her eyes. Only calm acceptance. "You should know," she whispered, "whatever this is, it's real to me, even if it has to stay ours." He nodded, feeling something ache and ease inside him all at once. "That's enough," he said simply. And as they stood there, close enough to feel each other's breath, far enough to let the moment breathe, it was clear that neither needed to say the word love. It lived in everything around them, in the stillness, in the warmth, in the quiet choice to stay. That night, nothing was promised and nothing was rushed. But for the first time, both of them stopped running from what had already found them.